Welcome, everyone, to the Chicago Football Connection podcast. I'm your host, Steve Letizia. Follow me on Twitter at CFC Bears. Joined by my co-host, Luke O'Grady. Follow him on Twitter at Luke O'Grady. Last week we did wide receiver preview for the offseason. We're not discussing the games anymore, especially with Justin Fields. The news of Justin Fields being put on IR or not starting on Sunday. The season is officially over. We're into the offseason. So we did wide receiver last week. Today we're looking at a different position group, probably the biggest need for the Bears. Offensive line. Yep. We're still a little bit too far out to kind of get into offensive tackle, guard, center. So we're going to do kind of an offensive lineman as a whole. And then once we get closer to the draft and closer to free agency, we can kind of narrow down and talk about individual position groups. But offensive tackle is obviously a huge need right now. We have, if the season ended today and we made no changes going into in the offseason, our offensive line would be Braxton Jones at left tackle, Cody Whitehair at left guard, Lucas Patrick at center, Kevin Jenkins at right guard, and probably Larry Borum at right tackle, maybe Alex Leatherwood, I don't know. But Riley Reef if we bring him back. So that's obviously not a very good offensive line. The Bears need realistically at minimum 2 starters.
Yeah,
at minimum.
You could argue, depending on how you view Braxton Jones, you could argue 4. I think the only person that goes into 2023 penciled in as a starter is Tevin Jenkins. I think every time he touched the field and was healthy, he looked like he belonged there. So but I think Bears would feel great if they could stop if Larry Borum moved from a starting right tackle to like a swing tackle. Mm-hmm. Cody Whitehair makes way too much sense as a cut target. To some extent, we don't need the money, but just from a dollars and cents point of view and his production, it doesn't really. He probably makes a lot of sense to move on from, which is a shame because he's actually been a great Bear for a long time.
Definitely.
Lucas Patrick is going to be under contract. We actually didn't really get to see a fair shake of him at center, but I think I saw enough of him at the guard positions to say I think we probably need to upgrade there. Tevin Jenkins, like you said, at right guard will stay, and then Braxton Jones is the one where, he's a tough one. I think everybody's kind of learned that he's pretty susceptible to bull rushes and straight arms and stuff. And if you can't improve that, you can't really have an Achilles heel on the line. So I would imagine that the Bears are probably evaluating alternatives. If that's a position where they have to kind of concede and say we're going to roll with Braxton Jones again, I think he's done enough to deserve that to some extent. But there are definitely better options out there.
Yeah,
but at least 3 legitimate upgrades on the line is going to be needed.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Yeah, with Braxton Jones, he's shown flashes, but not nearly enough to be handed a starter job.
Yeah,
you have to at least explore that. You have to bring in competition for him for sure. Mm-hmm. Cody Whitehair, I agree with you. Great Bear. His best days are behind him. He started out the year pretty good this year, but an injury hit him, and he has not been the same and has not played well. And what he's getting. The Bears don't need the money, but what he's not worth what he's getting paid for. It's possible maybe you can bring him back on a lesser deal and as some depth. But Tevin Jenkins is really the only guy. If you put Larry Borum as a swing tackle or Braxton Jones as a swing tackle, I feel a lot better about that. But luckily, there's a lot of different ways that they can attack the offseason here. Some good free agents, some good draft prospects. So let's start there. Let's start with the draft. I know free agency is first, but I have my draft rankings up in front of me right now. So let's start with the draft. So it's a draft that lacks top end talent on the offense.
I think so as well. I think a lot of people really have I hear a lot of high praise for someone like Skoronski, and I think we're kind of the same on him. That I think we agree he is offensive lineman number 1, but does that mean that he is a day 1 Pro Bowler kind of thing that some of these players get touted as when they come out? I don't really think so. I know that you have some concerns about where even his fit is, and I also think that there are other players that, as far as fit and as far as value, that I think we like maybe not just as much as Skoronski, but are definitely if we left the draft without Skoronski and had them, we'd probably feel fine with.
Yeah, Skoronski's definitely offensive lineman 1, best offensive lineman in the draft. There are questions on if he can stay at tackle, if he moves inside the guard. I think it's pretty clear he moves inside the guard, but I do think the team that does draft him should start him at left tackle and see if he can defy the odds, because he does have sub 33-inch arms. I looked it up. There has not been a Pro Bowl offensive lineman or a left tackle or any tackle with sub 33-inch arms ever. Not even like a fluke Pro Bowl year. It's literally never happened. There have been guys with shorter arms who have succeeded. Rashawn Slater, former Northwestern player, always gets named. He had 33-inch arms. Joe Thomas is another guy who always gets mentioned. He had like 33 and a half. Skoronski is going to be at like 32 and a half, so a full inch shorter than those guys. So I think he's going to be a guard.
Half an inch, but it's also like, it's just half an inch.
Yeah,
it matters.
It matters. It matters, unfortunately, in the NFL. He does a good job of countering long arms into his chest, despite his short arms. But there's only so much that will work at the next level. He's able to do that consistently in college, but with guys, when you getting guys, defensive ends who have 36-inch arms and just crazy strong, like it's gonna be tougher for him. The margin of error is just so small. That's really what it comes down to. Yeah. Will he be able to do it? Probably, but the margin of error is so small that any if his technique isn't absolutely perfect on every snap, it's just not going to work out.
To be honest, it's something that's you definitely want to avoid being the person that says it's never been done before, so it can't be done. But by the same metric, if it's never been done before on the size of scope that we've seen in the NFL, then you probably have a good indication. The thing that's nice is from the Bears is I think everybody would agree that if he does become a Bear, it's in that situation where we trade down and we get him in the 6 or 6 to 10 range, whatever it is. Right. If he doesn't work out at left tackle, we need a left guard. So it's it really isn't a horrible situation for us to be in, but you could be a team that needs a tackle and has a great left guard. And you don't want to be the guy that's switching him to guard and also switching him to the right side, because as much as people think that that's an easy switch. If you listen to offensive tackles and offensive guards talk about it, it isn't an easy switch. It can be done.
Exactly.
For example, I know it's different, but I played left side in volleyball in high school, and when I played in university, I had to play right side. And there are similar movements where it's just a 2-step jump, but doing them the opposite side feels so unnatural. It would probably take a whole offseason to start to build the kinesthetic memory that you need there. It's doable, but it's also a reason why I think I lean toward when I look at these prospects. I've looked at a lot more right tackles than I have left tackles. I've looked at a lot more guards than I have left tackles. Just because I don't want to be the team that grabs a guy and says, "You're just amazing at tackle. We're going to flip your position." I wouldn't hate if we did it. It's doable, but it's something I'm weary of.
Yeah, I think Jeff Schwartz, the longtime offensive lineman for the Giants and Panthers, I think he said it best. I think you know what I'm going to say. He said he compared switching sides of the offensive line to wiping your ass with the other hand.
Dude, it's such a funny thing to think about because I actually couldn't even imagine.
Never done it, so I don't know. It's so it's just you can do it. It's just uncomfortable and bad. So yeah, I agree with you. I do think right tackle is probably the biggest need. But and Skoronski's perfect because played left tackle in college. But I think he'd be a very perfect left guard. Yep. So if you start him at left tackle and it doesn't work out, you just slide him over to left guard. And I think he's also, not only is he the best prospect in the draft, he's also the most pro ready. He can step in from day one and contribute at a pretty decent level too, at least as an average starter until he progresses and gets. But I think his ceiling is, as a guard at least, his ceiling is pretty high.
Yeah.
He reminds me of this is a very high praise, but Zach Martin for the Cowboys. He was a left tackle in college at Notre Dame, I believe. I think it was Notre Dame. He was a left tackle in college, had sub 33-inch arms, moved inside to guard, and has been an all-pro guard for 10 years.
Who else?
Yeah. So I don't know if he's going to get to quite that level, but kind of the similar circumstances. A guy who's really, really good college left tackle.
Technician
who had to move inside, and it worked out really well for him. And I'm sure at the time he didn't want to move inside, but it obviously worked out really well for him. So
I think that's pretty much on our list. That's the no-brainer. It'd be hard. I actually think that the person I have is the wish list for offensive lineman. The person I have at number 2, I really don't have too far behind Peter Skoronski, but I think it isn't surprising that we both have him at number 1. Mm-hmm. Who do you have at number 2?
I was just gonna. So at number 2, I flipped back and forth on this, and it was between 2 guys. 2 offensive tackles, Paris Johnson from Ohio State and Darnell Wright from Tennessee.
Yep.
And I think I'm higher on Darnell Wright than some people, but
he seems to be shooting up draft boards right now.
Yeah.
Every time I'm on Twitter.
The guy just doesn't lose. He just doesn't lose. And he's interesting because before this year, I was reading a Dane Brugler article or something. Before this year, he wasn't really considered draft prospect, like maybe like a day 3 guy, you know, late day 2 at best. And now I think he's solidly in the first round. And
oh wow,
in the late first round, I would take him. You know, or maybe early second, kind of that range. But yeah, I think I'm actually I went into this podcast not having a decision on number 2. I think I'm going to stick with my guns and go Darnell Wright at number 2.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think rising tides raise all ships. So Tennessee, you know, playing as good as they did, everybody's starting to get a little bit more attention. And I think he's also one of those guys where he's a right tackle. He, you know, day one he plugs in and he's in that position that we need. I don't have him at number 2. I actually, honestly, I'm excited to have the conversation because there's another right tackle that I don't see getting the talk, and he actually plays opposite Paris Johnson. Darnell Jones from Ohio State is a guy that, if for some reason, like the way that the draft builds up, you know, Darnell Wright ends up going in that first round or early second round spot. The thing that's tough is I think that late first, early second is a tough spot for the Bears to end up being in. Like, I just don't see the trade situation where that is like we acquire picks in that range. And I really do think that's where like a lot of my favorite like line players go. So like you said, I think Darnell Wright goes in that range. I think Osiris Torrence goes in that range, who I would like, I think would be a great fit for the Bears. I think he's actually who I have at number 2.
Osiris Torrence.
Yeah. I don't think that there's a situation where we end up getting him. Unfortunately, he seems like he's locked into that kind of like 20 to 40 range.
Yeah, that seems about right for him.
And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that the Bears would trade down from 1 into that range unless we recoup another one of the people we're trading with second and get into that range. But he's mine. I think I don't like just looking at his tape. I don't know. I haven't put my finger on a weakness yet. He's got the size that I want in the position. He plays in like probably the most competitive division of football or in college football. And I think that, you know, he's never looked at a place. He had a matchup this year against Jalen Carter that I thought he got the better of. And I think he plugs right into that left guard spot on the Bears line for the next decade kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. So he plays right guard for Florida. That'd be the only thing with the Bears because obviously Tevin Jenkins is going to be a right guard.
Right guard. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to move him to left. But I think as a prospect, he's a really great player. Just not talking about the Bears. And I think he'd be a fit. And he's pretty scheme dependent. He's a bigger guy. He's like 350 pounds, but moves pretty well. Yeah. So it's not like he's just a big baller.
About as far as it's looked, Poles has really valued athleticism on the line as opposed to like that typical brute, like, you know, Rodney Hudson, biggest guy in the line kind of style. And maybe that would deter him from someone like an Osiris Torrence, and like maybe someone like an Andrew Voorhees would make more sense at that spot. Cause I think he's like 30 or 40 pounds lighter, a little bit more explosive. And honestly,
I like Voorhees a lot. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, he really isn't too far down from where I have Osiris. And I think that it's like, right now, like I hear people, it's kind of like that Zay Flowers thing for the last 2 months. It's like people are like kind of listing him in the 4th round. It's like, what am I missing here?
So I 100% agree with you. I like Osiris Torrence a lot. I was kind of flipping between him and Voorhees as my offensive guard too. Yeah. I ended up with Torrence, but Voorhees was close. And the reason that he's been mocked that late is because I think he's like 25 years old. He's an older prospect. He's like he's 24 now, or like turns 25 during the year or something like that. But I think in that, you know, 2nd, 3rd round range, I don't care if he's 24 right now. Like he's a stud. He's
100%
very athletic, good hands, perfect for an outside zone scheme, wide zone scheme. So I think he would be a perfect fit. I don't care that I see why, like, because if you just watch the tape alone, like he's clearly, you know, a 2nd round prospect at worst. I think the age is knocking him down a little bit, but he's the real deal for sure.
Yeah.
So he didn't make my top 5, but
it's tough, close. Right? Especially considering we're kind of just introducing it, and there's, you know, you could definitely make an argument for like, you know, top 5 tackles, top 5 centers, top 5 guards. So to blend them is a little tough, and it honestly probably lends itself to more to like need. But yeah, So I have I go Skoronski, and then I got Osiris Torrence at 2.
And then you got at 3.
No. I have
for guards though. For guards.
Yeah. So Voorhees is a close second. Okay. Who do you got at the 3 spot?
I think to some extent too, this is us kind of like almost like putting together a Bears wish list. Not exactly the best, because again, like across disciplines, it's tough. But
yeah, there are gonna be guys that the Bears won't even have on their board.
Yeah.
Some guys who will have like pretty good tape that they won't have on their board, and there will also be guys on the Bears board who other teams won't have on their board at all. Who's a good example? This isn't my next guy, but Anton Harrison is the guy that I like.
Yeah,
he's a smaller, more athletic left tackle. There'll be teams that don't even have him on their board because he's not a power player. He's athletic.
He actually fits the mold of what we were talking about with Poles a lot better than some of the other dudes.
Yeah, I think he does as well. But my third is Paris Johnson. I was looking for Paris Johnson from Ohio State, the left tackle. I have a lot of concerns about him. I don't think he's quite the prospect that like he's been mocked on. I've seen him mocked in like the top 10, even like 10 to 15. I think that's too high for him. I think he's more of a late first guy.
Yeah, I think he needs to get some cement in his boots. I feel like kind of the same as like Braxton Jones. It feels like sometimes he can get moved by bigger prospects.
Yeah.
I don't know. To some extent, I don't know. Do you think that there's any like benefit to like the like familiarity that he would have with like a Justin Fields? Like, do you think that plays into it at all? I don't even know if he was starting when Justin Fields was there, to be honest.
I don't think he was, to be honest. And I know he played right guard last year. Now he's at left tackle. So I don't think so. But he's a guy who's super athletic. Like he's gonna blow up the combine. And like that is that also is kind of what he's kind of like laying his hat on, is that I'm more athletic than that guy going up across from me. And in the NFL, the guys across from you are going to be just as athletic as you,
if not more.
And he's not if not more, and he's not a technician at all. Like he's got a lot to work to clean up, oversets a lot, but he's got what you look for in a prototypical left tackle. He's got the frame, he's got the length, he's got the athleticism. Like he's got everything there. He just needs to put it together. I just don't know. I think year one he's going to be. Is going to be a learning curve
for him.
Yeah. So I don't. That's why I just think he's like a late first round pick with potential.
One thing I do think is nice, and I think we've heard a lot about it in the Bears Twitterverse, is that Getsy actually does a really good job. And as people have gotten injured, it's been harder to. But he does a good job of scheming people into positions that they can be successful. So for example, it's like how often you're able to get guys in their true pass sets, or how often you're moving the pocket and giving people like a bit of a leg up so that these DNs and these outside linebackers aren't able to just tee off and go rush. And I think that's something that he'll probably do a good job with whichever of these rookies we end up adding to the team. He did a good job of it with Braxton Jones. He did a good job of it with Larry Borum. So I think I don't worry that some of these players will have time to develop. Like I think that we'll try to put them in positions to succeed. But I just don't think if we do like a trade that you see all the time with like the Lions, where it's like you grab pick 4 and then you also recoup pick 18. At the 18 range, if we grab Paris Johnson, he fits the mold. He's extremely athletic. He's a bit light on his feet. He could even be a player. He's maybe a little bit too tall to kick into guard, but
he didn't play. His tape at guard from last year was like not very good.
Really?
He's definitely better. He's definitely better as a tackle. And I think when I say that he's more like a late first round prospect, I think he's going to be picked in the top probably 7 to 15 range. I don't know, something like that. Just because he plays a premium position and his ceiling is sky high. But in terms of like the guy you're going to get next year, I don't know if the Bears can afford to draft someone who's not going to be like an immediate impact, like difference maker. I think they really need to do, especially if they do trade back and they're in that 7th, if they have the 5th, 6th, 7th pick, something like that. Like,
dude, if they take Paris Johnson,
you have to pick
the 10.
You have to pick someone. You have to pick that guy. You pick at that range has to be an immediate start, above average starter for difference maker for your team. And I don't know if that's Paris Johnson in year one. I think he has all the potential in the world to get there, and I think he will get there. He just needs a lot more reps. Yeah. And I don't know if the Bears have that patience, because they need to start winning some games. Like this has been a bad year for in terms of that. If they come out next year and don't win, they don't have to make the playoffs. But if they don't compete for the playoffs,
next year seems like one where it's like a win would be the playoffs. That's I think as far as like you look at how these teams develop now, obviously some teams jump from being I remember there was that Dolphins team that went like 0-16, and then the next year they were doing all the Wildcat stuff, won like 12 games. It's not impossible that teams can do that, but as far as like the resources we have and the core people to build around right now, if we're not a playoff team next year, then there's something wrong with our evaluators, or there's something wrong with our coaches.
Yes, absolutely. At least got to be competing for a playoff spot.
100%. Yeah.
100%.
So, and to your point, like I think some of these players are projects, and more to like getting production out of them in 2023. If you watch the Lions game, it was like it did not matter who was open. It did not matter, how well plays were schemed up. You couldn't run an offense with an offensive line. If you maintain that level while someone's learning, like if you draft a new player and they kind of are on the Borum level or they're kind of on the white hair level as they're learning, we're still not going to know anything about Justin Fields. It's so funny that we're in this position because coming out, Justin Fields was like, oh, well, at least he can sit in the pocket and throw. He can run a 4.4, he can do all that. Doesn't really matter. He wasn't really a runner. At least he can throw. And now that's completely flipped.
Yeah.
Now we're getting the whole always a running back, and it's like we can't even really say, well, that's not who he is because it's how he's looked. Right. And if we don't do a good job of building around him where he can just set his feet and spin the ball like he's supposed to, then next year's a failed year.
Yeah, 100%.
So it can't be. I think I agree. It can't really be a project.
And I think Paris Johnson is a project.
Yeah.
But if that being said, if you do take him, I'd be okay with that just because his potential is so sky high, and he could be the best left tackle in football. But I think
don't get me wrong. Whoever we draft, I'm going to convince myself was the right choice.
Yeah, that's unfortunately very true. Yeah. All right, so that was my third, right? Yeah, it was my third guy. So who's your third guy? What did you say your third already?
Skoronski, Osiris. No, yeah, I had Paris at 3 too.
You paired 3. Yeah. Okay. So then who's your 4 then?
4, I go DeJuan Jones.
DeJuan Jones, okay.
He doesn't exactly, yeah. He doesn't exactly fit the mold that I think Poles looks at. He is kind of a set your feet in the ground and you're not going through. I think he's like 6'8".
Dude,
like he's massive.
Huge.
He's like almost 400 pounds, like 300.
Yeah, I think he's like, he's listed like 6'8", 355. He's got to be close to 4.
So, maybe not the greatest fit, but you're putting him on the same side as Tevin Jenkins, who, for my buck is probably the most athletic right guard in the league. Mm-hmm. Like, when they look at his like relative athletic score, I think he was like 98th, 97th percentile kind of thing. So if you were to pair him with that, I think that would be good for him. And honestly, like the tackles in this offense do so much less moving than the guards do. You definitely need to see that athleticism and the compactness at guard.
That's fair.
But I would love the idea of if we got him in the second, even depending on how things go into the draft period, if we somehow got him in the third, a guy that can just set his feet and anchor behind Justin Fields. And he's another one where, I don't know if he started on Justin Fields' team, but he was in the meeting rooms and in the offensive rooms with Justin Fields for at least a year. I think that familiarity, it's not nothing. And like I said, I don't think it really adds itself to how chemistry will play out. But I think that would honestly be like almost a nice little hey, Justin, we got you a guy you're familiar with.
Yeah. Yeah, I like DeJuan Jones. You're obviously higher on him than I am. But I think there's a lot to like. I mean, like I said, he's just massive. 6'8", 350 pounds. But like the problem I had with him is that he has some really, really, really good reps, like that are just like absolutely dominant. But I'm just worried that he's just so much bigger than everyone else he's facing. And also he moves pretty well for being a guy like his size. So I don't think he's like going to be high on the Bears list because they obviously want to go after athletes. I don't think he'd be necessarily someone that's completely off their board because he has enough athleticism to compete. But I just think he's just so much bigger than the guys he's going up against that and that at the next level, I think he'll just have a little bit more problems because he's just kind of overpowering guys now.
Seriously, and it's like you can't teach height, you can't teach size.
Yeah. And maybe that's me nitpicking a little bit just because
for sure.
Because like his tape is really good, like for sure. I just don't know how well that translates.
Think I value him higher because he plugs in at right. He's not a guy that we're asking to switch positions. Honestly, there are 3 people on that Ohio State line that could have made my top 5.
Yeah, Luke Weisler, the center, he didn't make my top 5, but he made my top 5 centers easily. Oh yeah, so
I think me and you probably agree. I think John Michael Schmitz is the best center in the class. I don't like.
Yep. That's my next guy. Actually, it's a good transition. He's my number 4.
I thought about putting him at 4 too.
Yeah. So yeah, I like John. I actually watched a lot of him last night. So So yeah, he's really good. I don't know if he's he's not quite on the level as like Tyler Linderbaum was last year, but he's very solid. Just really doesn't lose a lot of reps. Rarely loses reps. Really athletic. Gets those reach blocks. The Minnesota runs a lot of outside zone.
Dude, really strong hands. He touches
really strong hands. I think he's just a really, really solid player that's going to be a 10-year pro.
Yep.
And be at least give you average play, if not probably above average play at the center position.
And I would say that by the same merit, that was our worst position on the offensive line all year.
Yeah, and also he's pro ready, so he steps in right away.
Yep.
And maybe because the position he plays center is a little devalued. They don't go in the first round as much as like tackles, so you're getting a guy maybe at a little bit of a discount almost. That discount might not be the right word, but.
He might sneak into the first round just because I feel like everybody loves all the things that we just said about him. It's that pro ready, that good demeanor.
Maybe the back end, but I could see him also going, second round easily.
If you go in and get him in the second round, you are laughing. I think he's gotten better each year that he's been there. I think like his snap count increased, and I think that was like a big part of it. But also by the same merit, he is that like 6'5", like 325, like athletic shape that I think that Poles leans toward, and like Poles, Andy, and Cunningham, like the very least they better be able to evaluate offensive line play. Both of them former offensive linemen. It's like you kind of have to be in Poles we trust frame when it comes to who he takes at this offensive line position. And I think if he did take a John Michael Schmitz, it fits the bill of what he wanted, and it's like a big need for us. It would be a home run, especially in the second round.
Absolutely. Yep. So I think another reason why I might fall for it, because I think he's also an older prospect. Because I don't know his exact age, but he was a 5th-year senior this year. So he's at least 23. But like again, I think that might just keep him out of the first round. But he's another guy you can get like kind of at a discount because of his age and stuff like that, and like. Home run, like you said, absolute home run if you get him in the second round.
Dude, that's kind of how I felt about Darnell Wright. Now everybody else is like Darnell Wright. It's like
I know everyone's jumping on the Darnell Wright bandwagon, but
I got him at 5. He got
you have him at 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's another one of those, right tackle fits the bill. I think I like the idea of getting him at a value, but if people like you keep running their mouth, then maybe we won't.
Yeah, because all 32 NFL GMs follow me on Twitter. Yeah, 100%. Darnell Wright, we've talked about it, but real heavy hands. Like I love the way when he punches, like they jolt back and like
feel it. He's tall too, isn't he? Isn't he like?
Yeah. I don't know if he's not DeJuan Jones height, but
no, I think DeJuan Jones is like 6'8". Yeah, Darnell Wright 6'6".
6'6". Yeah, because he's got really good size, really good power. I'm very, very curious to see how he performs at the combine because I don't think he's an elite athlete. But I think
a lot of these players too will probably endear themselves more to Poles after the combine because it does especially based on like when you would look at the last Ryan Pace draft and then you look at the first Ryan Poles draft, it was so clear that like relative athletic score was a huge point in the people that they were bringing in. They wanted to bring in people that were competing and then people that were athletic.
Yep, 100%. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what Darnell Wright does. Yeah. I don't think he's going to be like a below average athlete. I don't think he's going to be an elite athlete. I think he's going to fall kind of in that average range. But if he can just test like a little bit above average, then he's easy first round pick. But maybe we're hoping he tests a little bit below average and we can just get him for a steal in the second or something. But yeah, he's a great player. I think he's going to be really good at the next level.
Yeah, that's why that rounds up my top 5. Any one of those players I think would instantly make the Bears better.
So my 5th was Voorhees, who we talked about.
Yeah, 100%.
So I rounded out my top 5. So mine was Skoronski, Peter Skoronski, Darnell Wright, Paris Johnson, John Michael Schmitz, Andrew Voorhees. You want to rattle yours off again?
I was Peter Skoronski, Osiris Torrence, Paris Johnson, John Michael Schmitz, and then who do I have at 5? Darnell Wright. Yeah. And then honestly, very, 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 very close 6 would probably be Luke Whippler. Or Whippler.
Yeah, I don't know. Something like that. Yeah, the center from Ohio State. Yeah, so we had a pretty similar top 5. I'm sure we were considering.
I think we left off people like, that are like, for example, Anton Harrison, like you said. I think a lot of people would have them. Blake Freeland, people love. I don't love Blake Freeland.
I don't love him either.
Man. He's tall, but I don't even know.
He's tall. He's skinny. He's got a tight end body. Like he's 6'8", like 300 pounds, and I'd be surprised if he's 300 pounds.
6'8" is so big.
Yeah, but like when I was watching Blake Freeland, like I was like, yeah, he's really tall and he's like playing very upright. Like so like that his height is like
you don't want somebody just going straight through him. Yeah,
his height is definitely a disadvantage for him. I wish if he was 6'5", I think he'd be much better.
Dude, it was like we were talking about with the wide receiver Quentin Johnson. It's like I love that you're big, fast, and strong, but it's like I almost wish you were like a little smaller and fast and strong. Because it's like typically like to the arm length thing. Typically, like 6'3" and above receivers like don't make it as much as a little bit shorter receivers do. Right. I think if we looked into it, the amount of receivers that make the Pro Bowl at like 6'3" plus, and then at like 5'10" to 6'2", like that 5'10" to 6'2" range is kind of that sweet spot. That's sweet spot. And it's like, we're not going to discredit one of these options like a Blake Freeland for being too light, but also it's like it makes your job a little harder.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I do think Blake Freeland. I didn't like him, like you said. Like I didn't like him very much, but I think he could be a guy that like is a surprise high pick. Because he has athleticism, he's athletic, he's big, and there just aren't that many people that size who are that athletic in the world. So I just have a feeling about him that he's going to go like way higher than everyone thinks. But
see, I've been doing the same thing about and I've only been able to watch like games where it's like because you can't it's so hard to find anyone breaking down like tackle tape and putting it on YouTube, and like we talked about maybe like you have some access to film now that we'll be able to take advantage of, but it's hard for me to find film, especially up in Canada. But there's a tackle up at North Dakota State that I think people are gonna like fall in love with. I feel like he's athletic.
He's another guy. Yeah,
he dominated people. He was, at least as far as I can see, that he was playing against.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's gonna be. He's Maud. Yeah. How do you pronounce it? Yeah. He's definitely gonna go higher than people think.
I think he can get into the first.
He's day first round, yeah, maybe. I mean, we saw Cole Strange from Chattanooga go in the first round last year, so he could be another guy like that. But yeah, he's probably a second round guy, something like that. But maybe sneaks in the first, maybe falls in the third. But he's definitely a day 2 pick at worst.
And then we haven't even mentioned Broderick Jones, who I think would probably be some people's like.
Yeah, I know a lot of people. Dave Brugler tweeted that there are NFL teams that have Broderick Jones as their offensive tackle 1, just based on his athleticism. But he's kind of like a worse version of Paris Johnson to me because he's just all athleticism and not much technique. And
similar size too. They're both kind of just
similar size. Yeah, not like huge, but yeah. I mean, Broderick Jones. He didn't even make my top 5 tackles, to be honest.
Oh wow! What are your top 5 tackles? Skoronski.
So Johnson. Wright, Johnson. I have Anton Harrison at 3 because I like him. I think he moves really well. He needs to build some strength up, but he moves really well. Then I have 2 guys who I really like and are probably going to be higher on them the most, and I might move the Broderick Jones above them eventually. But I have Carter Warren from Pittsburgh, left tackle for Pittsburgh. He's really good. He got injured this year, but he was playing so he only played a couple games this year, but he's really good. I think he's going to be a stud, and his injury might cause him to fall. Also, I don't have his medical, so it's possible he'll never play football again. I don't know. So I'm ranking him. I can't remember, to be honest, but I'm just ranking him just based on what I've seen because I don't have any of that information. So I have him, and then I have an underclassman at 5 who hasn't declared yet, but Graham Barton from Duke.
He's
pretty good.
He's what was I gonna say? He's another one where it's like 305 pounds kind of thing.
Yeah, a little lighter. I like the light offensive lineman who can move like real quick. That's like my type. So
I mean, and to your point, that's what we've seen. It seems that like the Poles and Cunningham kind of lean toward as well.
Yeah, and I don't know what his arm length is either. So he might be another guy who possibly moves inside the guard. I think he might have a little shorter arms, but I like him a lot too. And then Broderick Jones is next, but I might move Broderick Jones up because like I said, like a lot of smart people really love Broderick Jones, and I don't know what I'm missing. It's kind of like am I evaluating him incorrectly, or should I stick to my guns and like?
That's how I feel about Quentin Johnson. It's like I guess he's the best.
Yeah, I know. That's how I feel about Broderick Jones. It's like he's really athletic for sure. He's a good run blocker, but pass blocking is a nightmare. If you watch Braxton Jones versus Missouri, he gets dominated on a rep by rep basis. Like it's bad.
Yeah. But like you're saying, we have likely 3 spots that need starters, not like depth, and maybe 4. I would imagine that we probably do a good job of adding at least 1, maybe 2 people to the offensive line before the draft that could possibly start. I know that, unfortunately, a lot of the players that you and I liked are already re-signed. I think that obviously our favorite was going to be Elton Jenkins.
Yeah, that was a big hit to the free agency.
With Betsy re-signed, so he's off, and then also Jack Conklin, who as far as like projecting a fit, he was a right tackle. There's to some extent you have to imagine that everybody going into this offseason is going to go and want to play with Justin Fields, but he's not going to hit the market either. So there's still options available. I would say that.
I think just going back to we did that the free agent preview a couple weeks ago, and I think we both had Elton Jenkins as our top priority. I think I said I'd be shocked if he's not a Chicago Bear next year. So much for that. And I think I don't know about you, I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure I had Jack Conklin as my number 2 target.
Dude, I think I did too.
So that was a real bummer. But
it happened like within the course of like 2 hours. It was like
2 hours. It was back to back. It was awful. But there are still some free agents available.
Yeah. I think pretty much since week 1, I've been thinking about Mike McGlinchey. He's a right tackle that has always been an above average starter in the NFL, and if the price is right, if you could add someone to that line, you can just kind of set and forget where Justin Fields he's got the professional experience. You don't need to worry if he's going to project correctly, and if you can make it so that you're not going into the draft having to draft for need. I think if the contract makes sense, he's probably the best offensive tackle available. There's an offensive tackle that's going to become a free agent out of Atlanta that I was watching this year. McGarry.
Caleb McGarry. I had him listed too. So both those guys, I envision them as pretty similar players. I don't know if so McGarry is interesting because he before this year was rough.
That's exactly what it is. He just came.
The Falcons were like considering releasing him. I don't think I think they declined his 5th-year option because he was a former first-round pick. And then he had a pretty good year this year, especially in the run game. But I view McGarry and McGlinchey as very similar. Guys who are really good run blockers, can move really well, but probably aren't great pass blockers. But you sign one or both. You sign one of them, and you kind of hope, they can improve still as a pass blocker. They're guys who these are the guys you have guys like this who are very, very talented and maybe aren't great pass blockers. Those are the guys you can hide. You can't hide a guy who, is just bad. But these guys who are really good run blockers and
have
maybe they struggle a little bit. They have a strength, but they struggle a little bit with pass protection. You can chip with a tight end, chip with a running back to kind of hide those guys. So I think those 2 guys would make a lot of sense for the Bears.
I have my opinions on it, but what if the Bears were pursuing Jason Kelce?
I would love Jason Kelce on the Bears for a 1 more year. He's old. Well, it's like a stopgap. I don't. I thought he might be retiring. Isn't he retiring?
I haven't heard about it. I know JJ.
I don't know if he
did the "This is it and I'm done," and I'm pretty tuned into their podcast. I don't know if he's hinted at being done. I don't know. Okay. The only thing is I don't know if has he been anyone but an Eagle. Has he always?
No, that's a good point. I think he's always been an Eagle. Yeah. I don't know if he okay. So let's say he's not retiring. So would he go to a team like the Bears?
That's what I'm saying.
Last year,
is he
is he going to go to the Bears and be even the biggest optimists have to realize we're probably not going to win a Super Bowl next year. I think we should be competing and have a really successful year. But I don't know. I feel like he would go to a Super Bowl contender or bust. He's going to staying on the Eagles or going to the Chiefs.
Kind of like what JJ Watt was imagining he might be a final piece for the Cardinals, and then it all blows up. And he goes, "I'm fucking done."
Yeah, peace.
I'm out of here. I know. Yeah, I mean that's my only thing is I think if you could get him a 2-year, I think he's still legitimately one of the best centers in football, and he brings some experience and some nastiness to that. But the price would have to be right, and it just doesn't seem to me that it makes a lot of sense that he would be doing that. He's 30.
Yeah.
He's going to be 36 by this time next year.
Yeah, and do you want to uproot your family for 1 year? He's been lived in Philadelphia that entire time. He'll probably but I think that would be, from just a player fit standpoint, I think that would be perfect.
Yeah.
Another big name, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts because but Orlando Brown from the Chiefs is a free agent. I know Bears fans on Twitter, I see a lot of people want Orlando Brown. I don't think that would be a good use of resources.
Well, he's a left tackle, right?
He played right tackle. So he played right tackle for the Ravens. And he wanted to play left tackle because he wanted to get paid like a left tackle. So he got traded to the Chiefs and they moved him to left tackle. He was probably better suited at right tackle. He was also much better suited in the Ravens kind of gap power scheme than the Chiefs inside zone scheme. So because he's not athletic at all. So I don't think he would, even though he comes from the Chiefs, where Poles obviously is very familiar with, I don't think he would be. Of it.
I've actually had thoughts that because of that, it's almost a move that for some reason, I don't know why, Bears fans are kind of not considering, but it really does make a ton of sense.
It does.
Especially considering you could probably be Poles and say, hey, just in 3 years, left tackles and right tackles are going to be paid the same. We just have a different understanding of why people were paying left tackles like that. And I just don't think it's going to maintain, especially considering how some of the new contracts, someone like a Jack Conklin has gotten. But, again,
I just think he's not. His lack of athleticism scares me. He's not a guy I think you give a big contract to.
What about someone like a Laremy Tunsil? Apparently, he wants out of that last year of his contract and wants to reset the market.
Yeah, I haven't looked into that at all, but I think Laremy Tunsil is a good player. I don't know what it would take to acquire him because you have to give up draft picks at that point. But to solidify that left tackle spot, how old is Tunsil? I feel like he's got to be
old. I think he's
30 years old.
Maybe not, man. Because Orlando,
he's 28.
I was saying Orlando Franklin's not even. He's 26 or something.
Yeah. So yeah,
you can make an argument that you're getting Tunsil in his prime.
Yeah. So yeah, I would be perfectly fine with that, depending on what you have to give up. But
it also could be a thing where he forces his way out. I mean, the Texans could be that team where it's if the Texans are trying to get if everything goes the way it should this week, if the Texans are trying to get from pick number 2 to pick number 1 to make sure that they get the quarterback they want, something like a first, a third this year, and the rights to Laremy Tunsil wouldn't be a terrible bet.
Yeah, if they're gonna have to get rid of Laremy Tunsil for nothing anyway, they'll kind of throw that in as a sweetener.
Cut him, or are you going to use him to go and get your quarterback of the future?
And it also would make sense because the Texans then they get Bryce Young at 1, and then they have the 12th overall pick. They pick Paris Johnson there, or Skoronski or someone. You got your left tackle,
and to some extent, the value from go to 2 to 1 is probably bigger than people realize, but it's not 2 firsts. So something like recouping a day 2 pick and then getting someone the rights to Tunsil, because to some extent Tunsil will come a little cheaper if it's in a trade, because that you're getting a guy that isn't taking any money less than the highest paid tackle in the game. And it's we're kind of in a position where in 2023 you can we actually just need to throw money at people. If we have to make it the most expensive tackle in the game, fine, just take it.
Yeah, front load it. We'll give you $40 million this year, and Yeah, no, I think that's actually a really good, really smart play. It would be a good use of resources if, because like you said, I don't think if you could use that to trade up, that would be absolutely perfect. I don't think even if you just traded straight up for him, it's not going to take a first round pick because, like you said, you have to give him this gigantic contract.
Yeah,
I don't even think it would take a second. I think it would be a third.
Yeah, exactly. My thing is Tunsil left tackle. So
yeah,
would you be upgrading? Yes. Would you be adding a place and still leaving yourself likely 2-3 holes that you still have to fill? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Because I think without a doubt, left guard, center, and right tackle need to be addressed. It would be an upgrade, and it's you'd probably be getting, I don't know, for my money, the best pass blocking tackle in the league.
Yeah.
But you still have to address the right tackle. You still have to address the center. You still have to address. I guess it depends on how much you actually believe that Lucas Patrick can be the guy at center. But I think to be fair, his tape in Green Bay at center wasn't terrible. And if he's your worst lineman, that's not the worst.
Exactly. That's what it comes down to. If he's your worst offensive lineman, you can scheme around that. You can hide him. But if you're counting on him to be your best offensive lineman, which is kind of what we were doing this year, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, as we witnessed.
Dude, we were so down bad about adding offensive linemen this offseason.
there
was that Bills guard,
Ryan Bates. Yeah,
Bates. Oh, it was like the world ended when we didn't get him.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure don't quote me on this because I haven't watched him at all, but I'm pretty sure I saw a tweet the other day that like he's doing terrible, like he's not good, and he was like our big target. So maybe we dodged a bullet there.
There's always how it works, but yeah, I mean, to some extent, you look at the tackle ratings on PFF. Take that with a grain of salt because we don't really know how they evaluate stuff. But Braxton Jones and Laremy Tunsil are only 5 spots different.
Yeah. Yeah,
so
I mean, are they really though?
I know, and we talked about that, like the true pass sets and stuff. Like with Getsy does a good job of hiding them, but it's like to some extent, Braxton Jones is probably your second best offensive lineman. Is it worth like that first trade in the draft going back from 1 to 2, which you'll probably trade down from anyway? Is it worth like that upgrade being what you get in that position, or is it worth maybe like doing it with someone else and trying to add like doing it in a different way? Because unless they cut him, it'll have to be a trade.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I 100% agree with you. Like, they do need a right tackle more, but I think if you have the opportunity to add a guy like Tunsil, who's for not, too much draft capital and who cares about money, we need to give out money anyway. I think that's kind of like a no-brainer. And then you kind of deal with the aftermath of that after it. Like, you don't think about kind of where guys are going to slot when you make that trade for a guy like that good. You kind of just like, okay, here's our left tackle. Once you make the trade, okay, now what do we do with Braxton Jones?
Yeah.
Like, okay, do we move him to the right side? Do we move him to guard? Do we use him as a swing tackle? I don't know, but you kind of figure that out after the fact almost because he's just that level of talent. When you get that opportunity to upgrade, you just take it and then kind of figure it out later.
To some extent, it's almost like by upgrading the left tackle position, it almost in turn also adds a Riley Reif-esque move to the team where, okay, now Braxton Jones isn't starting and you have probably one of your most talented and disciplined offensive linemen available as a backup, available to try the right side, available as a swing tackle. So it's not like, you lose Braxton Jones to get Laremy Tunsil. It might be that he can still contribute. But that is kind of how I view free agency is the Bears need to do. If they don't get someone, like we said, like if they don't get someone like an Orlando Brown or like a Jason Kelsey or a McGlinchey or a McGarry, it just needs to be those deals like a Riley Reif where it's 1 year, 2 year, not vet minimum, but not a whole lot. But if you don't get the person that you need in the draft, you don't need to reach. You don't need to be desperate. You can say, oh, whatever, I guess we'll roll with Riley Reif. Because Riley Reif and his, I don't mean him specifically, but a player of that caliber where he has NFL experience. He's not going to be the person that sinks your ship. Maybe he's not going to be the best lineman in the world, but at the very least, Justin Fields could maybe find some solace in trusting him.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, they definitely need to bring in guys like that too. I mean, they need to bring in one big free agent. They need to draft an offensive lineman pretty high, and then they need to bring in at least one, some maybe two other guys to compete.
Yeah.
So depending on where what positions you need there, but a couple other guys. I mean, there's Andre Dillard for the Eagles.
I think he has the ties with Ian Cunningham. I think he's had a great year. I think he's gotten better every year that he's been there. He's young. He's athletic. I think he
exactly. I was going to say he fits the mold perfect. He's super athletic. It's kind of what you want.
Also strikes me as a guy that isn't going to make it to free agency.
It's possible, yeah, but he's there. Some guards. You got Isaac. Also from the Eagles, Isaac Sumalo. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. But he's been kind of like a back and forth into starter backup for them. I think he'd be kind of a nice piece. Dalton Risner from the Broncos.
Yep.
Another athletic guard.
There's
some options.
He's been on a couple of teams, and it's that's another one. He's Blythe, Connor McGovern, Justin Pugh, Roger Saffold, Rodney Hudson. All of those guys kind of strike me in that Riley Reif role, where if they have to be your starter, unreal.
Yeah.
Now, I think people are probably going to need to appreciate the fact that the Bears can probably pay whoever they want as long as those people want to come to Chicago this offseason. And we're probably going to overpay for some guys because, like we said, we have to spend the money. And the money isn't really an issue. So some people are probably going to see these big free agent contracts handed out to someone like, an Austin Blythe or a Connor McGovern that we may not even be planning on starting or will still be addressing in the draft as well. But they'll look at the money and say, oh, this is a mistake. And it's You just got to realize you need to add talent and competition to that room.
You need to, and there's never been a free agent contract that hasn't been an overpay. You're always overpaying in free agency.
Legitimately.
The nature of the beast. So it's going to happen.
At least not first wave. At least not the guys that
Yeah, that's fair. I'm talking about the first wave big guys. Like those are always overpays.
Yeah,
no
and
sometimes you can get some value later on. But
Poles has said that he wants to make his make his money in the draft and then kind of the second wave of free agency. But I feel it's a bit of a broken record. They have to spend money. They have to be in the first wave of some positions. The problem is I think, especially with some of the re-signings already, like free agency really isn't very top heavy.
No, it's not a great free agency class. I believe there's some D tackles, which we'll get into, later on. Offensive linemen, there's some intriguing offensive linemen. There are no good wide receivers in free agency. At least no one worth paying $20 million a year or anything like that. So, but yeah, I do feel like it's down class in free agency, which is not the good timing for the Bears because we really needed a loaded free agency class.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the best tackles in the league, I would say that of the 5 or 10 best tackles in the league, 80 to 90% have been drafted in the first round. So whether or not we address the tackle or the guard or the center position in free agency, I think you'd be stunned to see one of the first 2 picks for the Bears this year not be an offensive lineman in the draft as well.
Yeah, and I think they are going to, get McGlinchey or McGarry or one of those big time tackles.
Well, they better.
They just have to.
Exactly. If they somehow miss out on that and get forced to draft someone like a Broderick at wherever we end up picking because we need to address the tackle position, that's a bad spot to be in.
That's a really bad. Yeah, they have to. Even if you could sign one of those guys and still draft a Braxton Jones or Skoronski or Paris Johnson the first, and then you have your bookend tackles for a decade, and
that is probably how you should do it.
Yeah, just
and
kind of double up.
Yeah, and it's something that we saw. Pace isn't scared to throw some of those vet minimum smaller contracts out to some guys that can contribute. Someone like a Byron Pringle, a Riley Reif, an ESB. And if they end up having to contribute, that's fine. Or if you get someone in the draft that you think can supplement them, for example, Braxton Jones sent Riley Reif to the bench. It's not how he planned it, but that's how it ended up being. You at least are lucky to have that Riley Reif if you need them.
Right, exactly, and that's what they'll need to do. Get that. The biggest issue not the biggest issue, but a big issue this year has just been depth. We had no depth. Our 22 starters weren't terrible, but we had no depth. And once one guy went down, it was just a snowball effect, and we had no depth. So getting those veteran guys on short-term 1-year deals is you have to.
Is Braxton Jones the only person that started every game on the line this year?
Probably, yeah. Whitehair is out. Mustipher did, I think. No, he didn't start one game.
Yeah,
because once Patrick started and then got hurt.
Played like 5 snaps, and it was it was literally we're never going to escape this guy.
Yeah. So I think, but I think technically Braxton Jones is
starting at center. No, I saw a stat that was saying that it'll only be the X amount of times in Chicago Bears history that an offensive lineman has played every snap for the Chicago Bears, and I think Braxton Jones is the only player on the team right now that's playing 100% of snaps.
Well, he needs all the reps he can get, so
he does.
Yeah, he needs all the reps he can get, so hopefully he can build on that. He needs to get into the weight room immediately.
Yeah,
and I know that's easy for me to say sitting in my chair. Braxton Jones isn't strong enough. Yeah, you weakling. Come on.
Yeah, he looked pretty despondent about his performance in the lines. Did you see that he was hanging around afterwards?
Yeah, I did see that. I mean, he had a rough.
He's got a really good head on his shoulders, so hopefully
he's rooting for him
in a good position where it's okay, this is what I need to work on this offseason. He gets after it.
I mean, the worst case, let's say you do sign McGlinchey, and let's say you do draft, I don't know, someone in the top 2 rounds. You have, and you expect them to play left tackle. You expect McGlinchey to play right tackle. The best case scenario would be Braxton Jones to just fucking dominate this offseason and work and be like, okay, now we have 3 really good tackles.
Exactly.
We have to move one of them to guard, but that's a good problem to have.
Exactly.
So hopefully that happens.
End up with the best backup tackle in the league and a good swing tackle and someone that can fill in where they need to. Yeah, that should be good. It'll be interesting. It's the most you can make an argument that maybe D-line, because actually I believe our corners our D-backs are fairly good and not really having the opportunity to succeed because of how bad our D-line is. But by the same merit, I think our quarterback is pretty good, and he's not really having the chance to succeed because of the O-line. So it probably is our biggest focus, and it's something that really, if there's anything that Poles needs to make sure he does, he just takes a lot of shots.
Yes.
You need to add 4 or 5 players to that room that are willing to compete.
Yeah. And I think that's another reason why trading down just makes so much sense. Because you can take multiple shots along the offensive line with like day 2 picks. You could draft 2 guys on day 2 or something like that if you need to, or depending on how free agency goes.
And depending on where we end up, if we end up picking first, or theoretically, I think we can still get up to 4th. But I think likely we'll pick first or second. And
I think the likeliest out like 80% chance of picking second or something. And
really?
So I don't know. I forget. I don't know what it
is,
but it's a pretty high likelihood of picking second. We're starting Nathan Peterman on Sunday. We're going to lose.
The Colts have a 75% chance of losing this week based on Vegas right now. Or no, a chance of losing to the Texans.
Of losing. Oh.
So it's actually in a better position than you'd think. But the fact is even if we do pick first or second, I would say that there is a less than 1% chance that we use that pick. Do you know how insane people will be if we had the first overall pick and we just snap Will Anderson? That would pretty much be the only person that I think that would happen for.
I think Will Anderson's a great player, and I would love to have him on my team. I'd be pretty pissed if we took him at 1. We got to trade down. We just got to get more picks. Like we have to.
Gold mine.
You're sitting on a gold mine. You get a first, because it's not just picks this year. You get a first round pick next year. If you trade the first overall pick, you have to get the first round pick next year.
Do you know how much I want to be the team that goes, we did all this year, and we got 2 first round picks. That is never us.
Yeah, I know. And if you like it's just shaping out so perfectly because all the teams behind the Bears need a quarterback. The Texans need a quarterback. The Lions need a quarterback. The Seahawks need a quarterback. The Colts need a quarterback. The Raiders need a quarterback. Literally, like 5 of the 6 teams right behind them need a quarterback. And the Cardinals might even consider a quarterback.
There's so many teams in the like the 10 to 50, like the 10 to 20 range that like are worthy of it too. And if the deal is right, I think that the way the first round plays out, you want to be in that 15, 16 range. Somebody's going to make a mistake, and there's going to be a good player left on the board there. Like
I 100% agree. I think it would make a whole lot of sense to trade down twice in this draft. Honestly, trade down to like 5 or 6. Hope Will Anderson or Jalen Carter falls. If neither of them are there, you trade back again, and you get to that 15 range, and like you just get so many picks, and you still get a guy who's pretty good. Because I think the difference between the fall off after Will Anderson and Jalen Carter for me is pretty steep in terms of just overall prospects. I think it's Will Anderson, Carter, and then I don't like really anyone else in that top 10 range.
What do you think about Miles Murphy? I've heard a lot of good. Maybe we're getting too into it.
That'll be a conversation for another podcast. Maybe we do defensive line edge next week.
I think it makes sense. To be honest, there's so many that we need to add. It probably makes sense to break them up.
Yeah, let's break them up. We'll do edge next week. Is that cool?
Yep.
Okay, so you heard it here first. We'll do edge next week, and we'll talk about Miles Murphy. I'll get my thoughts on him and all the other edge players in free agency and the draft. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We really appreciate everyone's support. Make sure to like, subscribe, share, all that stuff. And we'll talk to everyone next week. We might do a live show, maybe. It's possible. We'll let you know.
Letting you know what's going on.
All right. Talk to you soon. Bear down.
Bear down.